Welcome back and thanks for staying with us tonight. Now, any mention of the phrase CRB, that's a Credit Reference Bureau, is always met with a little bit of hesitance, right? Because we always think of the negative listing and being blacklisted. Well, tonight I want to take you through the process of just what CRB is, what it means, and how, in fact, you can use it to your benefit. So, the CRB is a company that collects data on loans that have been issued by lending institutions in the country, and then they create a report on that. Now, if you take a look at how many credit reference bureau we have in the country, just 3 that have been licensed by the Central Bank of Kenya to submit data to all credit bureaus. So they receive all of this information from a number of institutions. Now, these are the 3 in the country: Metropole, Credit Info, and TransUnion. Now, Credit Info gave us quite a bit of information as to how it works, how they create their data, and why it's not always a negative listing that you need to look out for. All right, so let's start with where they get their information. So, Credit Info tells us that they get it from, as is mandated, by the way, by the CBK. They get their information from SACCOs, from banks, from fintechs. Don't worry about this word. It was just the mobile money lending apps that we were talking about last week. They also do get reports from the Higher Education Loans Board, and that is where a lot of the furore about CRB and the negative listing comes up. Now, in the future, they're hoping that they can get information from insurance companies, from telcos, and utility companies, perhaps like Kenya Power. So what do they do with all of this information that they get from these institutions? They prepare a credit report, what we usually loosely call a listing. Now, that listing isn't always negative. It can be both positive and negative. So what does this credit report have? Well, they take a look at a number of things. They take a look at when you make your payments. Do you make them on or before the due date? Have you defaulted on your payments or your loan? For how long? And this information is supposed to be given to them by the banks, and is supposed to be used by the banks to determine your credit worthiness. And we'll come to how you can use it in that instance. So it is a positive listing that you can have on a CRB when you are paying your amounts either before or on the due date. Now, it becomes negative, of course, when you default on those amounts of money that are due to you. Now, contrary to popular belief, there's about 500,000 people who have a negative credit score, but there's millions more, close to 5 million, who have a positive credit score. But in the event that you do have a negative credit report and a credit score with them, how do you clear your name? You get that message from them that tells you you owe 300 shillings. And by the way, it can be as little or as much as that. So the first thing you do is you contact the CRB, you take a look at your report. By the way, I should mention here that you are entitled to 1 free report every year. But in the event that you get a negative listing, you go to them and take a look at the accounts. If there is a discrepancy, you can go to your bank or your financial lending institution and clear that up with them, and make sure then that they send the correct reports back to the CRB. If you owe money, the simplest way to get yourself back onto a positive credit score is to pay your loan back. All right? So now we've talked about the positive and the negative. And it's important to remember that in countries like China, by the way, you may even be denied utility accounts like power in the event that your record is not up to date with Credit Reference Bureau. But they're always thought to be negative. Now, if it is positive, you are able to use that positive credit score with any financial institution that you are seeking a loan for, and be able to negotiate for a lower interest rate, for more money than you would actually have gotten, and also for a chance to spread out your payments in a time period that is more comfortable for you. So you can actually use it properly. Do financial institutions always allow you to do this? Not so, because many of them use it to blacklist. In fact, we've had the CRB for such a long time who would not have actually needed the interest rate cap, which then put everybody on the same credit score. But there is some good news for you, and this is because the central bank noted a little bit of mischief on the part of financial institutions who use this negatively. And this is the statement they made. They noted in what they're calling the Banking Sector Charter, which they released to guide banks and other financial institutions in their operations to make sure that they are customer-centric, that they appeal to your needs, and that they're open and transparent about the pricing of their products and such as their loans. And it covered a wide range of issues, but more importantly, for the purposes of this explainer, they did talk about the use of CRB. And this is what they noted, that banks have been reluctant to use credit scoring techniques. Instead, they prefer to put all borrowers on the same risk bracket, which allows them to charge high interest rates for personal loans. This is the important one. They have tendencies to use this credit information system mechanism negatively as a blacklisting tool. As a result, the CBK, through this Banking Sector Charter, says that mandates all banks to implement the CRB in the positive way that we were talking about. And they say they will make sure that banks are using positive credit scores to ensure that you get the best out of a listing at the CRB. And the best news tonight is that this Banking Sector Charter that now compels banks to use that credit score to your advantage took effect in February of this year. So CRB is not always something negative, but it is how that information is used by the lending institutions that is something that can be useful to you. So I'd advise you to do this. Go onto one of these and get to understand what your credit score looks like. It would be good to know. And then start to use that. I'd be interested to hear about that. If you have a good run with the banks and saying, my credit score is better than the next person's, and therefore I should get a better interest rate. So CRB is not necessarily the enemy. You can use it positively to your advantage. So make sure you go out and get your free credit report for this year. That's my explainer tonight.